What's up guys, Belamy Prime here, and today we're just going to be going over a quick little mage leveling guide for those of you returning or who are new to ArcheAge. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be going over the skills that you want to be taking while leveling, basically from level 1 to level 50 and then 55 before you start getting into like ancestral levels and things like that. So basically all we're going to be doing is just going over the most appropriate mage class for you to level as, at least in my opinion, and the skills that you want to be taking to make sure that you're pushing through all the kill quests while you're leveling, because anyone who's played ArcheAge before knows that the majority of leveling is just turn in, pick up quests, and just kill quests, so killing mobs and things like that. So making sure you're doing the right build is going to get you to max level faster. And one thing that I want everyone to understand is that you may not want to play this mage class in endgame, but this is the fastest one to level as, in my opinion. And in ArcheAge, unlike a lot of other games, you're not constrained to your class once you pick it. You can pick and change your class freely as you play. So you can come to any respawn point, Priestess, Nui, or Skill Manager, and you can switch Sorcery for literally any of the other skill trees that you haven't uh, spec, and you can level them all separately. So you can see here mine are all level 55. I can switch between them freely as I want and have all the skills available to me. So this is basically just the build that you want to use to push to level 55 as fast as possible. And then, you know, if you didn't like one of the skill trees or the playstyle that comes with it, then you can switch out to any other mage skill tree and just level that as well while you're, you know, just playing the game. It will level quite quickly. So the class we're going to be playing is Spellsinger. The reason I choose Spellsinger is one, sorcery. You're a mage. Sorcery is pretty much a given, especially while leveling. And the main reason we pick sorcery instead of malediction is because of Magic Circle. Magic Circle is a huge flat damage boost early on, especially while questing. I'll explain that a little bit further later. And then, of course, we like Songcraft, mostly because of our Deadly Refrain and our rhythm buffs, which I'll explain also shortly, basically give us a lot of flat damage early on also. And then Shadowplay is just a nice quality of life. Skill tree, we get the backdrop flame bolt interaction, which I'll also explain soon, which is nice, and we also can take stealth if we're having problems pulling more mobs than what we're intending to, so you can drop aggro and things like that. So we're going to jump right in. We're just going to talk about the skills that you're going to want to be taking and the reasons behind them. So to begin with, we're going to have our first 3 skills in sorcery, in our first 10, 15 levels. You're going to get access to these. So we'll just talk about each of these in the rows first. So these are the skills that you're going to want to be taking in the first 15, 20 levels. I can't, off the top of my head, remember exactly what levels you unlock each of these, because I think it changed pretty recently. But these will be your early level skills. Your Flame Bolt is your classic spammable skill. You want to have that. Freezing Arrow is a nice, it's got a pretty decent cast time on it, but it's a hard-hitting skill. Applies a slow, quite nice. Insulating Lens is just a shield, so when you pop it, you'll get an increased effective HP pool. So that's always nice to keep that up before any kind of fight where you're going to take damage. Saves you, regenning health or anything like that. Arc Lightning is going to be the first big skill that you get. So once you unlock it, this is a nice skill to start off with. You can see it combos here nicely with burning targets. Our Flame Bolt applies burning, so we can chuck a Flame Bolt and then throw out an Arc Lightning, and it's going to do big damage to whatever it is you're trying to kill. Now, the reason we take Shadowplay, or the main reason that I take Shadowplay, is for the dropback interaction. So we can read here, it grants the dropback buff, eliminating the cast time for Flame Bolt, Antithesis, and Thunder Earth. But we're talking about the Flame Bolt here. So basically, when you drop back and use Flame Bolt, you can cast them at instant speed for a nice DPS increase. So play around with that. I guarantee you'll like it. It's very strong, especially early on. And then Quick Step. Now, Quick Step is a perform skill. We'll show you how this works here. So basically, once you have an instrument, you can just perform the skill as as long as you channel it, and you will get an increased movement speed buff with Quick Step. The reason why we like this, especially while leveling, is that when you are on a mount, you can play Quick Step, and it will give the buff to your mount as well. So basically running between quests and things like that, you're going to have increased movement speed on your mount, which is really, 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 really useful and really nice. Okay, so moving on. The first skill that we want to make sure that we have, really, really important skill, especially while leveling, is Magic Circle. Magic Circle gives you a huge amount of flat magic attack as well as crit rate. Now, this is very, 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 very strong early on. Flat magic attack and crit rate are very, very nice. And dropping a magic circle on the ground before any kind of fight is super useful. So drop your magic circle as long as you stay in the circle. You can see once I move out I lose the buff, but as long as you're in the circle you'll get the buff, you'll get the increased magic attack and crit rate, which is extremely strong early on. So you want to be dropping that anytime it's on cooldown before you're about to hit any kind of mob, especially any kind of bigger mob. Now the next skill we'll take early on is double time. It's not a super important skill to be taking. I just like to run it. You know, it just gives you a nice speed boost for 2 seconds, which is just nice, you know, when you're running between mobs and things like that. Any kind of movement ability is nice in my books. I will point out that early on, until you know, if you have free skill points, it's fine to play with Freezing Earth, Flame Barrier, and Chain Lightning. They're nice skills while leveling. Any kind of damage skill is, if you can just find a way to throw it into your rotation, there's no reason not to. As well as Stalker's Mark. I recommend taking Stalker's Mark, especially just in general. It's good. It's a good debuff to throw on a tough enemy to make sure you're dealing increased damage to them if you know you're coming across any kind of tougher ones. And I recommend taking either Ode to Recovery or Healing Him. Ode to Recovery is similar to Quickstep. It channels basically and will heal you. So if you're taking damage, you can play Ode and it will regen your health slightly faster basically. And I know what you're thinking, it's a healing skill. I'm playing Mage, but it doesn't scale off your healing power. And regardless of what class you're playing, it does scale off your healing power. I shouldn't say that, but it scales well without any kind of healing power and will still give you good regen on your health. Healing Him is the better version of this basically. It's just a way to keep your HP nice and topped up while you're leveling. Basically the way this one works is you just throw it and it heals you essentially. And yes, this it just gives a flat amount of health. So, you know, instead of having to use consumables or things like that, you can pop your Healing Him and get a nice little chunk of health back. Now, the next skill in Songcraft, which is the last skill we take, is Deadly Refrain. Deadly Refrain is extremely strong while leveling early. Basically, you just want to keep this up. Once you unlock Deadly Refrain, you can see here, every time we pop it, we get 3 stacks of rhythm. And you can pop it on cooldown to get it up to a max of 15 stacks. Now, I will point out that you can stack this by playing Perform skills as well. So while you're riding on your mount playing your quick step, it will also be stacking stacks passively every few seconds. So you can keep this stacked quite easily while you're off your mount. And then we can see here that once we reach 15 stacks, we get a buff called Sustained Rhythm, which lasts for about 20 seconds. Yeah, 20 seconds. And it increases all our critical damage by 22.5%. Now that's a lot of critical damage, which scales nicely with our sorcery passive, which gives us crit rate, and our magic circle, which also gives us crit rate. So, you know, we're augmenting our critical rate early with these passives once you unlock this passive by putting some more points in here, and giving us a nice little bonus of crit damage. So you can see once you have the Sustained Rhythm up, you can just tap your Deadly Refrain every so often, keep that buff going, and keep it up between, you know, the mobs you're killing, which gives you a huge amount of DPS increase, which is super important early on. Now, once you unlock Bloody Chanti, I recommend dropping Ode to Recovery or Healing Him to pick up Bloody Chanti. It's very, very nice while you're leveling. Basically, it's another Perform skill, and it will give you increased skill damage and attack speed for the duration. So the way we like to use this is we'll drop a magic circle before we're about to kill something, and then before we cast our first spell, we just tap Chanti real quick and then go into our and then immediately use our next skill. So we can see here that if I cancel this real quick, we can see here that I will get the Chanti buff on my bar up here, and it will last for about 4.5 something seconds. And during that time, you can basically cast your first skill, and that first skill will have the increased skill damage from the Bloody Chanti. So, very useful to use it that way, if you can get used to, weaving this in between your abilities. So once you unlock that, you would generally reset, and you would pick up your 3 skills. I'd recommend healing him. It's nice to keep your HP up. And then we'll pick up Chanti, and then we'll take our Deadly Refrain to make sure we're keeping our stacks up. So, super important. These are the skills you want to be taking in Songcraft, especially while leveling. Later on, once you're done, killing mobs and you don't feel like you need healing him anymore, you can drop it and take, like, Sonic Wave, if you're PvPing or getting attacked by actual players. Or keep it. It's really nice for when you're grinding mobs. Now, the next few skills we'll talk about are ones in Sorcery. Meteor Strike, you'll unlock at level 50. Very, very strong skill, and a very good way to start off when you're tagging mobs. So you drop your circle, tap your Chanti, and then throw out a Meteor Strike. The Chanti generally, if you're using a staff and you actually have good cast time, which I don't because I'm a melee at the moment, generally you'll get your Meteor Strike off before your Chanti buff ends, and you'll get a nice huge damage boost on your Meteor Strike, especially while you're on your magic circle with your rhythm stacked. So a good way to pull mobs, that is, and that pretty much covers you up to level 50. After level 50, you start getting skill points every level, so you'll get one at level 51, 52, 53, etc. And you can go through, and once you unlock God's Whip is a very, very powerful skill, especially while killing mobs and things like that. So you can pick that up. I recommend using it. It's extremely fun to use, and it's just, a targeted lightning skill. I will recommend that if you go into functionality and you choose skill deployment location, make sure this box is ticked, because it will allow you to basically, you don't have to click where you're aiming your target skills like this one. See, normally you would have to use the skill and then direct it and then click. If you have this on, you can just basically cursor where you want to use it, and it will use it there. So it's very useful with God's Whip, which has 5 consecutive fast-paced lightning strikes, so I can quickly throw them in whatever direction I want. So very useful skills. I would say once you're level 55, actually, look, let's see this. Minus God's Whip, this would be the build that you would want at level 50. And then once you start getting more skill points, you can start picking up different skills. So I'll show you a realistic final build here for someone who is level 55 and still grinding mobs. So you would take Flame Bolt, Freezing Arrow, Insulating Lens. I would take Magic Circle. I would still take Arc Lightning, Meteor Strike, God's Whip, Backdrop. You would take Stalker's Mark. Free Runner is nice, it's just a move speed, attack speed buff. We take Quick Step for our mount and ourself, Double Time for ourself, Healing Him to heal yourself, Bloody Chanti, your Deadly Refrain. We've got 3 more skill points. You would take Chain Lightning. It's nice comboed with Insulating Lens. While your Insulating Lens is up, it will apply a stun. It's just an instant speed lightning attack. We would take Freezing Earth. It's a nice little AoE around us here, like so. Can be comboed nicely with your Freezing Arrow to apply a Deep Freeze on a mob that's a bit tougher, maybe. And then you would have the options of Frigitrax or Flame Barrier. I personally think Flame Barrier is better while killing mobs and things like that, but Frigitrax, it's a nice little defensive skill, and you can use it to instant cast your Freezing Arrow, which is quite nice. But I'd say Flame Barrier would be the way to go early on. You can pull a mob and then drop your Flame Barrier, make sure they run through it, and it will slow them and deal a lot of damage to them, especially if you've used Arc Lightning or God's Whip on them to apply Electrocute debuff. So yeah, I hope this helped in any kind of way. I know this was a super quick guide and I didn't really go over all the skills and the combos and things like that, but it's quite easy to see all the combos if you just read what effects they grant and the effects they combo with on each of the skills. Just take a couple of minutes to read what they combo with. And if this isn't easy enough for you, then you can easily go here to your skill combos. And basically what you want to do is you just want to click any skill, and it will tell you what kind of skills it will combo into, right? So you click, so we hit Flame Bolt here, we can see it combos into our Arc Lightning, granting it more damage. We can see it combos into our God's Whip, giving it more damage, and you can click almost any skill here and it will show you, a way in which it combos. So we can see here Freezing Earth. If we then use a Freezing Arrow, it will get a Deep Freeze. Frigid Tracks also applies freeze, so all these things can combo in different ways. See, our Meteor Strike does additional damage to electrocuted targets. We have 3 skills here that deal electrocute. So this is an easy tool to use. If you're, confused as to why we take any of the skills we do, pop that open, have a look, and you'll see for yourself. But yeah, I hope this was useful in any kind of way. I will be putting out a guide similar to this for melee, archer, and healer for early leveling. All of these are generally focused on solo leveling. If you're in a group, you can feel free to play with more of the AoE skills early on. If you're pulling in a group, maybe you have a healer or something like that, that could be a more efficient way of farming. But this is purely geared towards the solo, potentially duo grinding people. People who are just leveling with another DPS or something like that and just want to kill shit as fast as possible. So, hope this was useful, and I will leave a link in the description to my healer, my melee, and my archer leveling guides below. Cheers.